TyePod, hosted by your friendly neighborhood PhD. All right. Well, hi, everybody. It's another edition of the TyePod, and today I'm joined by George Pollock, who is involved with a lot of advocacy on muscular dystrophy and involved with some cycling, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of those details as we go. But George, I'd like to, if you don't mind, just give a brief introduction about you and kind of, your connection to the MD community and your involvement with the cycling a little bit.
Sure, Ty, thank you. And again, thanks for hosting me and thanks for doing this and bringing on guests. I hope you continue to do it for a long time and continue to raise awareness for this community and for all of us. Muscular dystrophy is a broadly defined disease that's typically inherited. Mine wasn't, but typically inherited, that we all face these different and unique scenarios and chronic illnesses. And hopefully is I think hopefully, and I think confidently, we're close to some cures and some treatments for all of us. So with that, again, thank you. My story is unique, but again, I think similar to some of your other guests and a lot of other folks that I've met with this. So my name is George Pollock. I live in Florida and Colorado. 57 years old. So I just quick background on what I have: facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, which is a fairly common muscular dystrophy. Typically affects people in the second decade of life, but there is an early onset that affects children really early and is obviously really devastating. Most of those kids at an early age, are in wheelchairs, can't move their arms, have trouble eating, and lots of other symptoms that a lot of folks in muscular dystrophy have. My symptoms presented themselves in my late 20s with my right, I guess call it shin muscle, was wasting away. And after a lot of doctors, there was really no conclusion at that point that that was from a bike injury. And I think typical of this disease, certainly with FSHD, it can present itself asymmetrically. So one
Mhm.
side doesn't really portend to be a disease, it tends to be an injury. But fast forward 10 years later, and my left shin and left calf started to atrophy. I'd hurt the soleus muscle, I tore it, and it never really recovered. And then my
Mhm.
left shin started to go away. So once that happened, the neurologist figured out that it's not an injury, it's something else. And I did the EMGs and the nerve conduction studies and all that, which led to a muscle biopsy, which concluded that it was FSHD, muscular dystrophy.
Mhm.
So I was in my late 30s. This is I guess 17, 18 years ago. So
Mhm.
not much known about it then, not much to do then,
Right.
and which will get to a lot of my passion in terms of what I do now. But um, looking back as a child, I've obviously had this my whole life. It was genetic. I played sports, played baseball, played football, raced
Mhm.
bicycles in my 20s and 30s. But looking back, I could do more pull-ups. I'm sorry, I could do more push-ups and sit-ups than most kids
Mhm.
anywhere. I could not do one pull-up.
Okay.
So just really odd, right? This muscle was
Yeah.
completely weak and it made zero sense. But as a kid, you're like, oh, okay, I'm just something's not right there.
You just go
And
with
then I
it,
was a
kind
slow
of.
runner. Yeah, you go with it. And then I was a slow runner. And again, I could do squats and leg extensions, leg curls where you use your hamstring, was extremely weak, which
Mhm.
caused the slow running. So again, looking back, there were these symptoms that were there.
Mhm.
As it manifests itself now, it was like right leg in my 20s, left leg in my 30s, and now all this is um, going away in my front and
Uh-huh.
back. So lifting the arms is reaching for something, is combing my hair. I'm left-handed. I have to comb on this
Mhm.
side. So a lot of that's just a slow burn going away, and hopefully we'll get treatments before it's too late for me. But what I've learned through this is, when I first was diagnosed with a neurologist in 2007. Their comment was, "Yeah, no cure, just be careful." I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" "Well, don't do anything." I'm like, well, "What does that mean?" They go, "Don't
Wow,
exercise." I'm
okay.
like, well, "What does that
Thanks.
mean?" I
Yeah.
go, I go, "I ride bikes." And she's like, "Well, what does that mean?" She goes, "How long?" "Well, 2, 3 hours, sometimes 4 or 5 hours. I race." She goes, "You can't do any more. You can do 30 minutes." And I go, well, with all due respect, I don't think I'm gonna really listen to your advice because I don't think that makes logical sense.
Well, did they say
So
that was
I'm
gonna like tear away? Like, what was the reasoning? Was there any why they said not to?
well, the the thought process, which has been proven false, I think,
Mhm.
the thought process was because of, certainly with FSHD, and this DUX4 protein or gene that's supposed to be turned off when you're born was still
Mhm.
turned on, and that protein was contributing to the muscle loss. It was toxic, so it was killing
Mhm.
muscle cells. So the thought process at the time was that if you exercise damages muscles, right? And then they recover, and there's a
Mhm.
process there where you get stronger, where the thought process where if you're damaging those muscles, muscle fibers and cells, they're not going to come back. And you're going to accelerate your deterioration. And I think what's since has been proven is that, the good muscle cells are still the good muscle cells,
Mhm.
and you can exercise them quite hard. I mean, you have to be careful
Yeah.
not put yourself in complete fatigue, but you can exercise those muscles, and they'll get stronger. And certainly, if you have um, compensating muscles where your one muscle or opposing muscles, one muscle's weak, one muscle's strong, you can still work that
Right.
strong muscle. You got to be careful with the weak muscle because there's nothing you can do about the weak muscle. It's just weak and it may get worse. I
Yeah.
don't think it's gotten worse through exercise or strength training that I do. I think it helps everything out. So, from that time on in '07, I was a big advocate of, I didn't race my bike anymore because, I would have, I had a couple of scenarios where my right ankle gave away during a sprint or
Mhm.
climbing a hill, and I crashed. I don't want to crash
Mhm.
anybody because I didn't know when that would go away or just give. And
Mhm.
it still does that every once in a while, but I think it's much more control because I've strengthened a lot of the other muscles, and I've changed how I clip into the pedals on the bike,
Mhm.
and I think I've just tried to compensate for that. But so I've continued to remain super active, and then in 16, June at the FSHD Society reached out to me, just me being a patient, and
Mhm.
then saw I had a business background, finance background, so she recruited me to the board of the FSHD Society. So
Okay.
I joined the board, and we're the global advocate, leading patient advocate group around the world. Yeah, started out with funding basic research to find a treatment or cure, and as we get closer to treatments and a number of drugs and clinical trials, over the last couple of years, we've moved into, I'll call it from the beginning to the end. We have patients, right? We have research that's moving into drug therapies or other therapies. So what do we need now? Well, we need to get that through a clinical trial. What do we need to do that? We need patients. How do we get patients? We've got to get them qualified for clinical trials. So
Mhm.
we've to do all of that, we need money, right, to support that
True. That's always
and market.
involved. Yeah.
And part of it's fundraising, marketing. Part of it is awareness like this. We just need more patients. So
Mhm.
we started our patient registry. Well, a few years ago, we started local advocate groups and started fundraising with a walk, and then we do other things that I'll get to. And then late last year, we launched our patient registry. We've just hit 500 patients. So these are clinical trial ready patients.
Mhm.
That's gold to pharmaceutical companies. They need this
Right.
data. It costs them a lot of money to recruit, as you know. And we're building that patient advocacy group, hoping to get to 5,000, 10,000 patients around the world. And Australia is a leader too. They're focused on their country at the moment, and with
Mhm.
the registry, and they're recruiting. So we're tackling this on a global basis. So my involvement with so the FSHD Society, as I said, I've been on the board since 2017. I
Mhm.
run the finance committee. I'm on the executive committee, so quite involved with the strategic outlook and vision, and supporting Mark Stone, our CEO, and the rest of the folks there, really moving this forward. But I also think we all have a personal responsibility. I think at least we feel it. You certainly do with
Right.
you spend a lot of time on recruiting folks to the podcast, doing the podcast, editing it, and just getting the story out there, which is so important. So I've done a similar focus through my bike racing. So that's what I can do. That's what I like. So in 2017, I convinced the FSHD Society well, I didn't really convince them. I just told them I was going to do this race and donate the money, because at first they
Mhm.
were little too risk adverse. Since then, it's been complete support. But in any event, I
Mhm.
recruited a bunch of my not so smart friends and said, let's go race across the country for a week. So
Mhm.
we participated in what's called the Race Across America, which is a bike race. It's gone on for 40 something years now.
Mhm.
There's a solo division where people race 9 or 12 days by themselves, which is a bit more to the insane side than I'm actually at, but not too far. And then we did it as an 8-person team because that was just something that was doable for us, because
Yeah.
it required 8 riders, 12 to 14 crew. It's just a big logistical effort. It's really not a bike race. It's an adventure, or an
Mhm.
expedition, I should say. So we did it. We did it in 7 days and change. We learned a lot, raised a bunch of money, figured it would be one and done.
Mhm.
And then 2018, a good friend of mine who did not do the first year, he was very intrigued by this and convinced me to do it again. We raised money again for the FSHD Society. He raised money for mental health, and it was those two things are connected. So it made sense to really fundraise for both, which we did.
Right.
And we raised the most money of any team that year. So in 2019, we did it again, raised 2.5 times what we raised before, and did it in 6 days. So we
Mhm.
learned a lot, and and it had another successful outing. And then 2021, we did the race across the West, which was 4-person team, which was 1,000 miles versus 3,000 miles. So just a couple of days versus 7 days, just a little bit easier adventure, and finished in Durango. And then since
Uh-huh.
then, every year, I essentially pick an endurance bike racing event and raise money around it. So last year, I did the triple bypass ride in Colorado, which
Mhm.
went from Evergreen to Avon. It was 120 miles over 3 mountain passes, and used that to raise money. There's another gentleman, Michael Ehlers, who's doing it this year. He lives in Colorado. His sister has FSHD, was just diagnosed, so he's out raising money
Mhm.
right now. And then in November, I'm going to race the El Tour de Tucson, which is one of the largest road bike races in the U.S. in Tucson, Arizona, and use that as my fundraising
Mhm.
effort this year. There's a family there with a child. I think he's 18 now, but who had early onset. So we're really focused this year on raising money for early onset FSHD to accelerate that, because many of those kids are kids and certain adults that don't fit the profile. A lot of times those
Yeah,
adults have to be able to walk or lift their arms. They don't qualify for clinical trials. So that whole group is excluded. And I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but it just seems common sense to me that if we could make certain that with children that these kids are different than adults, certainly
right.
before puberty, it's all the drugs impact or affect them differently. But if we
Mhm.
can certainly demonstrate efficacy, or certainly safety first with the drug, and then try it
Yeah.
for efficacy, I think kids deteriorate so much quicker than adults that I
Mhm.
would think that if we could administer a safe drug for a treatment, we're going to see results. We're going to see results, and get
Right.
it, and therefore be able to get a drug approved quicker, because the challenge with our disease is the progress of um, wasting, or muscle wasting, can be so slow. So
Mhm.
then, and if you're older, how do you tell that you're getting weaker from the disease, or
True.
you're losing strength? So there's also a big focus, and there's a lot of money going towards how do we objectively measure that muscle loss. So
Mhm.
it's not just a movement, because you can do a movement, and there's move studies like that. That says, okay, this month you can move your arm this way,
Mhm.
6 months you can only get it this way, and then a year you can't get it up. Okay, that's your muscles lost, right? But if it was this way, and then this, and then this,
Right. Something that's really
subjectively,
trackable.
you're like, yeah, I didn't feel good that day. I was tight, or I had pulled a muscle. You won't know. But if you can do it through an objective manner, through a blood test, or something along that manner, then we
Mhm.
can demonstrably prove that if someone's administered a drug and that stops or slows down,
Mhm.
then we have success, right? And
Right.
it can get approved and help a lot of people. So that's where a lot of research and science is spent. And then
Uh-huh.
obviously once the muscular dystrophy is stopped, meaning no more loss progression,
Mhm.
then how do you rebuild muscle, right?
Right. Right.
That's a whole different issue, and everybody in
That's
the world is trying to
yeah.
solve muscle strengthening, for athletes to aging to disease to everything. That's I don't think we have to focus too much on that now, because there's so much money going
Yeah.
into it. But otherwise, that we'll all benefit from. And then
Mhm.
there's also another path of treatment that really leads to a cure. I mean, SMA, which is a spinal muscular atrophy disease that
Mhm.
kids get out, when they're born. There's a drug now that is administered at that time, and it's essentially a cure. So
Right.
there's some efforts here where they're a drug where it's a one and done shot, where it's cured and goes away. I think that's a longer, harder,
I was wondering there was something like
outcome,
that
but
for
they're working on it. They're
yeah.
working on it. I think I just saw a new study that got approved in New Zealand. That's their focus, is the one and done drug. So
Yeah.
lots in the lots being worked on, lots being done. My effort, because I'm a finance guy, so the science, I barely can spell most of those words. My
Mhm.
focus is on how do I continue to build awareness. How do I continue to help others like you build awareness, and others that are out there doing some other podcasts? And we run FSHD. Tim Hollenbach runs a podcast for us, and he interviews quite a few folks, from
Okay.
the scientists. He just interviewed our chairman, Jim Chan. He just interviewed
Mhm.
a Paralympic athlete that's pretty compromised, and just talked about his fitness and nutrition
Yeah.
regime and whatnot. So I think we just have to be just relentless and just keep going.
Yeah.
There's no stopping. There's no, the end game is everyone doesn't have this, and that might be ideal, but that's the end game. And that's what we have
Right.
to. And when I say this, I mean all muscular dystrophies. They have to
Right.
go away, and that should be the ideal. And no one, that ASA should sleep till it's done, and we should convince everyone else that they shouldn't sleep either till it's done.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still, amazed that when I was younger, I only thought, well, there's a handful of muscular dystrophies, right? But like as I went along, I realized, well, there's this umbrella of just neuromuscular wasting diseases, and there's this huge diversity there. So it's like, I just feel like it's worthwhile to have the differences that we talk about, but then to realize as a whole, that I think there's enough commonality with many of them that maybe the treatments can bridge some gaps, I hope.
I
So
think
that's,
so, and I think in this day and age with I think the focus with the science, and I think the ability, I just call it big data. So I come from a data center business. So the ability
yeah.
to compute big data with these, these super fast computer chips has changed the game for a lot of things. So you can
Hmm.
run so many different computations and algorithms that 15 years ago might have taken you a year or years to do, and now you can do some of this
Right.
stuff in days or seconds. So I think that allows you to isolate different, whether it's compounds or drugs or
Hmm.
different treatments, and determine whether there's a probability that would work or not, and then and stuff that doesn't work, just throw it out and move on. And I've done that, a lot
Yeah.
of that with ALS too, years ago with some leading scientists. So I think and I think the cross pollination across diseases and across disciplines
Yeah.
makes it a big difference too. Some guy who's a physics expert might find um, something that helps a biologist, right?
True. Oh
That then
yeah.
leads to a cure. So all that, and the that's a good thing about, frankly, the internet and ubiquitous nature of it on such a global basis, and the ability to find data and find people,
Hmm.
that sort of cross work, I think it's more prevalent and relevant today than
Right.
it ever has been.
Right. Yeah. And I love that fact that it's not just, I mean, it is like sharing information on treatments and things like that, but it's also creating that extension of community and understanding, well, there's people across the globe that can communicate and come together to figure out, treatments and things that might work. And it's very like interdisciplinary too, right? You have, like you said, the physicists and the biologists, kind of coming together and like the biomedical side of things and finding new compounds that show promise maybe as treatment. So it feels slow and incremental still at times in my experience, but I know that it's gaining, so hopefully things will just keep improving on the treatment side for sure.
Yeah, I hope so. And the other thing, I didn't really have any appreciation of this, but I'd read a book last year called Codebreaker, and
Uh-huh.
she was she came up with another woman in France. They came up with a CRISPR technology,
Mm-hmm.
which is gene editing and whatnot.
Hmm.
And um, reading that book, which I didn't have an appreciation of, but maybe I should have, is how competitive these labs are.
They
So I
are.
think that competition helps too, because just like anybody else, they want to do well, and where they want to succeed in whatever success means for them. It could be
Mhm.
finding the cure, it could be making more money, but they're competitive, and I think that helps because it drives their behavior to win and get the
Right.
best talent and the best people they can find on the planet to solve whatever they're trying to solve to. And
Yeah,
I think that helps all of us.
I think so too. As far as like your treatment and everything, like have the doctors that you've seen over the years like given you things to try that actually have, benefited and helped with I guess stopping or slowing down muscle loss or anything?
No, and frankly, I used to see the neurologist every year, and then
Yeah,
part of the dilemma here in the U.S. is there's not enough doctors, neurologists.
true.
So I'm seeing the neurologist next month for the first time in 5 years because my doctor stopped working, and then I had an appointment. They canceled it for no reason. And when I asked,
Oh.
when are we going to reschedule? They said we have no idea. So
Mhm.
part of the problem is finding neurologists. And one thing that we've done at the FSHD Society is we've just launched the Patient Navigator. So Patient Navigator is a tool to find resources. Those resources
Mhm.
could be, how do I need a wheelchair, but I don't know how to buy it. The resources that would help me finance it or buy it for me.
Right.
We helped a guy buy a van last year with a different group. But part of that navigator is the database of doctors and clinicians that can help
Yeah.
in your location. So it's searchable. So whether you need a neurologist in Tampa or you need a physical therapist, it provides that tool for all of us. So back to your question, short answer is I don't think I've done anything to help.
Yeah.
The gentleman that I was going to at the MD clinic here, I think he was the most thoughtful.
Mhm.
And what I liked about them is their approach to helping people. And again, there are a lot more folks in their MD clinic way worse than me,
Mhm.
but they sort of triage the thing. So when you go to the doctor there, you see the physician who's a neurologist who has MD and FSHD patients. So he's focused on um, your physical body, right? He's
Right.
measuring things and if it's worse or whatnot. And then second, you this is all mandatory. When you go there, you see the physician, you see the social worker, because they want to make certain, is your home environment okay? Did you lose your
Right.
job? Is your kids all right? So what's your stressor? Because that contributes to I think accelerating your downfall to some extent. So
Hmm.
that's whole sort of mental piece of it. And then you also see a physical therapist. And so I think that's where, as I look back, the physician just sort of kept an eye on it, social just checking in on you. And then physical
Hmm.
therapist, I think she was able to help because I had some shoulder issues from riding. And so a lot of those exercises she gave me, I do.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of, I'm not sure I'd call it strength training because I'm not using a ton of weight, but I do a lot of mobility movements
Hmm.
and more focused on just basic life movements. So, for example, as we all age, everyone gets weaker, and the number one cause of death of old people is falling, right? It's because
Okay.
they're not strong enough.
Right.
So if you're, so I focus on, what I can still do, squats and leg things and just these shoulder things with really hardly any weight, just to move them. And
Keep
I'm
that
a big
range of
advocate
motion too.
to keep the range of motion, be able to squat,
Yeah.
get off the floor. And what I tell, and it's on my website in terms of what we're
Mhm.
trying to do. I just have a front there with our story, but
Yeah.
my focus is to inspire people to move to the best of their ability. So
Hmm.
I'm fortunate I can still move. I ride a bike better than I can walk. If I foot drops, I trip. Walking is not the best thing for me because
Yeah.
I'm going to fall. But I can ride and I can still do these other exercises. But my point is, I think it's so important to move to whatever your ability is. So
Right.
some folks are in wheelchairs, got it. They can't walk. We host a feeling fitness podcast every 2 weeks at the FSHD Society, and I
Mm.
sat in on 2 weeks ago, and the woman who hosted it was in a wheelchair from the disease. And
Yeah.
her and her therapist, she showed people how to do yoga out in the chair. She couldn't get up,
Mhm.
but just those little movements that she could still do
I can speak to that too, definitely,
make a huge
because
difference. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like I'm in a power chair and everything, and I'm not able to
right.
really do much on that, but I can feel like nerves and muscles. Like I have like a flexing routine I go through and kind of make sure
Yeah.
that they're firing at least, and try to just do as much flexing and movement as I can for sure, and I did want to add too, you were saying that doing too much exercise, you were saying that didn't necessarily harm the muscles or progress, but I was thinking the opposite of like, so I spent over 2 months in the hospital and I lost a huge amount of muscle
Yes.
function from that. So it seems like it's the opposite too on that side.
It's absolutely opposite. That's a great point. So
Yeah.
there's a middle ground. I think the middle ground's pretty wide too for most
Yeah.
people in terms of what's tolerable for them. So if you don't do any movement, I think that's a very bad recipe
Hmm.
for everybody, not just us with disease. It's bad for everybody on the planet
It
because you
is.
see it
Yeah.
every day. Like there are folks, the lady in the yoga chair. Because at first I was like, okay, that seems pretty simple, but not.
Hmm.
She was doing neck things. You just do a neck thing, and you haven't moved your neck like this lately. You
Hmm.
feel all of it
Yeah.
there, and most people can't do that. Or get on the, if you can get on the floor, get up off the floor. That's a big movement that people can't do. So,
Hmm.
so yeah, if I don't move every single day, I feel it in a couple of days. And then I did it in February. We did this crazy bike race over a couple of days. I have pushed the limit before where I'm just completely exhausted. I'm like, oh, that
Hmm.
was too much.
Yeah.
So you got
Yeah.
to watch it. But I think every single person can benefit from movement. I mean, my father's
Right.
83 years old. He has Parkinson's. Guess what? He does weights every single day.
Yeah.
Five
I
pound
mean,
weight, 5 pound weights every single day.
the
5 pound. That's all
longevity
you
that
need.
that provides is, it's just unreal, I think.
Well, I think it saved his life last year, and
Yeah.
it's just I call it blood flow. You have to get blood flow to other parts of your body
And
besides
and
your
breathing
stomach.
exercises, right? Like
Yeah.
like the lung, like just filling those in and like routine rhythmic breathing practices, I think are a big deal, at least for me it has been. So they're
Well, and
just
you're right. I just read a book, and I forget his name. A guy in Pennsylvania. He's a cycling coach, been around forever. He's
uh,
very focused on all those micro movements. So he does a lot of he shows his warm up regime. He's doing these workout regimes with zero weights, and what he wants is perfection in the movement. It might be a
mhm.
just your deadlift on one leg, but it's perfection in movement because that's getting to those micro muscles. And he starts every single workout with breathing exercises,
Yeah.
every single one, because you said there's a method to that and a
Hmm.
methodology to that in terms of how you breathe and how it becomes more effective for then
Yeah.
when you move with your muscle movement, whether you're lifting weights or getting out of a chair, whatever it is. And that we're seeing more and more research around that, just ability to breathe. And that's why it's meditation, I think. And when you start yoga or a class or in a yoga
Yeah.
class, I do some on a Wahoo Fitness app. It's all breathing. And when you first look at it, first thing about, like, for me, it's like, okay, I didn't do anything. I'm not going to just lay here. But
Yeah.
then you do it, and you're like, Man, I think that actually works. It feels
And if
pretty
you do it
good.
like 3 or 4 days in a row, it feels even better. It seems like, you just build
Yeah,
in
no, I
that
think you're right.
routine.
Yeah, so I think the key is, and I think you've said it, is just consistency.
Yeah.
Just not every day because you have to rest, but almost every day do something, right? Whether
Hmm.
it's the simple exercises, whether it's the meditation, whether it's the breathing exercises, just do something because you're right. The I think the problems just exacerbate themselves without movement, and it's not just for us;
I think so too.
it's for the world. I mean, and it just gets worse and worse the older you get because you get less and you get weaker. There's no
Right.
question about that. You
I
lose
mean,
VO2
there's,
max, you lose physical strength, you lose it all. And there are ways to really push that off. And Peter Attia, who wrote Longevity, who was a doctor, doctor in the space, prolific podcaster and still a clinician,
mhm.
but he talks about lifespan and health span. And lifespan is how long you live, right? And health span is
Right.
how well do you live. So you want to get to
Yeah.
that seventh, eighth, ninth decades where, and he's got simple tests like a squat test or a grip test or a movement test that and those are predictors of how you're going to age in your 70s
Hmm.
or 80s. And it
Hmm.
makes a big difference if you can't move and you're on medicines and then it starts to cost a lot. So there's ways to prevent that, but you've got to start early. Just one to start early for the physical, and two, just so it's just mentally something you do every day.
Right. Right. And I find that obviously that mental component it's always connected, right? It's everything that's physical with muscular dystrophy, there's that, mental side with it. And that's been obviously for a lot of us, I think that's probably been a bigger issue than some of the muscle things going on too at times.
Right. And your brain will, that's a good point because I absolutely think there's a connection.
Yeah.
There is a connection, but I think your brain will tell you if you're doing too much.
Right.
Right. So it's not always, hey, I don't, I'm lazy. It's not that you're lazy. It's your brain will tell you if you're doing too much.
Your body's trying to tell
And
you
and
if you,
it,
yeah.
your brain's telling your body to slow it down or stop,
Hmm.
and they'll do it. There's, folks that do, folks that do it, well, not even folks that have been that have suffered heat exhaustion or overheated from exercise,
Hmm.
and sometimes that governor is compromised by certain medications,
Hmm.
and that turns that governor off, and then they overheat. It's not dehydration; it's the brain just basically, I call it fried. But so there is absolutely a balance there and a governance that works that you have to listen to.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, kind of in my background, I had to stop the job I was currently doing working because I was overextended like mentally too, and the physical
Yeah.
toll was there. So it's just at some point, something's going to give, and then you're going to have to recover. And it's kind of been a whole reset thing in terms of that for me. But like for you growing up, and your symptom onset really probably was more dramatic in your 20s, 30s, you're saying, right? So like I guess what was that like for you having most of the functionality growing up and getting to that point and then more of a rapid, loss maybe of muscle? Like how did you sort of cope with that as far as like mental health and things going along?
Yeah, I was fine with it just
Mhm.
because I when she said there's no cure, I just accepted it. And
Right.
said, okay, there's certain things I should be careful doing, and
Hmm.
it's going to get worse. So I think mentally, my guess is it'll get harder as you get more
Yeah.
compromised. But just be careful. I mean, I've fortunately haven't hurt myself from this. I've had
Right.
several trips and falls where I somehow learned to fall properly. So I just scraped my knee. I haven't hit my head or anything or
There's technique to
broken
that
an
for
arm or
sure.
something like that. But
Yeah.
there's technique to it. I mean, I slipped on the ice 2 years ago and screwed up this AC joint. I just
Mm-hmm.
fell. And so I just, I wear spikes if I'm out here in Colorado with the
Hmm.
ice. And I just takes, be careful on, I can go uphill pretty well. Downhill for me is
Uh,
really hard. For whatever reasons, the muscles are really weak or feel really weak and they feel really unstable. So, stairs, I hold onto the rail like a death grip going
yeah.
upstairs and downstairs because I
Yeah.
know the second I don't think about it, you clip a foot and you're going to fall 10 feet down the stairs. So
Mhm.
I I hold on to rails like nobody's business because I don't want to take a header going down the stairs.
Yeah.
So I'm
And
super
I
super
imagine
so
like recovery time too is probably longer, right? Like to get things back to where they were after you've heard something.
oh, absolutely. It takes a while. And the thing about and I think most folks that don't have anything like we do, what they don't realize, and you're in the wheelchair, so you've got to face different scenarios. But
Mhm.
for me, where I can still walk, I got to think about every single step. right? Most people don't think about
Yeah.
walking. That's you just walk. And I've done some crazy. I can go walk 5 miles or whatever, but slowly. But I got to think about every step, where my foot is, and I don't if it's off the trail, then that's the problem. It's flat,
Yeah.
okay. But yeah, a couple years ago, I was walking back from a restaurant at the beach, stepped on a rock the wrong way on the ground, tore my leg completely up, sprained my
Hmm.
ankle. It's just so, and because I for that 2 seconds I didn't think about walking, and I didn't look that there was a rock there that put my foot just slightly off by half an inch,
Right.
and that ankle buckled. And when that started to go, the other ankle buckled, and then boom, I'm on the ground in like a second. So
Yeah.
that's sort of one of the challenges. We have to be aware of our sort of body and
Constantly.
space because the second you don't think about it, you get hurt. So that's
Yeah.
probably the one of the biggest things for me. That's a mentally challenging because you're always on. You're just always thinking. I get up now when I over this after this
Yeah.
car walk and get a glass of water. I'm gonna think about it.
Right. Well,
I got to
there's
think about
always
it.
going
So
to be that in
that's
the back of your mind and like some anxiety, that you have to know every single thing on the ground. And most people, I'm sure, take that for granted, right? Because it's just so it's by
you
nature.
just
They
kid,
don't
you just get up.
even,
Yeah, you're old. You
yeah,
start walking. You never thought about it.
yeah,
You never think about it the rest of your life. And it's like you got to think about it. I got to think about it every day.
yeah. No, I definitely relate to you there. Even I'm thinking back when I was in college, like getting a handout, like reaching up to get a paper, I had to think about because I couldn't
Yeah.
just reach up and grab it. So like there's all these scenarios that you
Right.
kind of play out in your mind, and all that plus what you already have to like other things you think about just normally. So there's this huge, I don't know, this huge extra thing that's always a weight, on your shoulders.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
that.
You having to burn more brain power just thinking about it. That's right.
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I saw a video I had to ask you about. It was a dog sledding team that looked like on the snow. And is that something
Oh
that you
yeah.
kind of have you done it multiple times, or was that kind of just a one-time really cool thing you got to go do?
So I've never done it.
Yeah.
And I had a friend in town from college, and he was looking to
Uh-huh.
do other things. And he's like, "Well, let's go dog sledding." So they had a couple places here in Colorado, and
Hmm.
it it was it was fascinating. It was one of the coolest things I've ever done because you're you're driving the sled. They give you about a 10-minute
Yeah.
instruction, say you're on it, and the only real instruction was these dogs are going to go, and when they go downhill, get on the brake as hard as you possibly can because if not, they're just going to take off.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was fascinating. I mean, these dogs are bred for this. It's like
Hmm.
it's in their DNA, and people they just that's what they're bred to do, and they
Yeah.
just you can see them get all fired up. They love it, and they just want to go. And they said sometimes they had 100 dogs there, and sometimes they said because in the summer there's no dogs, so they got to train them and they take them to the river and
Yeah.
they exercise and they got a real thing they use to run them. But I said, these dogs ever get loose? And he said, yeah, sometimes they break off the chain. And I go, what do they do? Well, they had a 12-mile course. He goes, we know where the dogs are. They run out there and go run the course by themselves as fast as they can.
Yeah. So
It's
it
like they're
just it
free.
just like takes off.
It's
Yeah.
just what they do. So it's like
Yeah.
they're not. It's not like they're working something they don't want to do or it's cruel to them.
True.
No, they want to run. They want
They
to run
love
and they
it.
want to
Yeah.
run. They love it,
Yeah.
and that's the proof when when they can just run off and leave. They go run the
They
course.
want to do the same exact things,
Yeah,
but
they go do the
faster.
same thing. And
Yeah.
they come fun just faster with no one
Yeah.
pulling on them. And he
That
goes, we'll go
makes
out there
total
and
sense.
we'll try to catch up to them on the snowmobiles. He goes there.
Yeah.
Why? And they go right back to the kennel, sit down, and want to eat.
Yeah. That reminds me
It
so
was
much
cool.
of
Yeah.
the border collies I had when I was a kid, and they're like their instinct is to like help herd like animals and stuff, right? They
Same
love it.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I even had one that would pace my house because we didn't have animals to work, but he was like, just patrolling and keeping the house in check or something. So
Well, he'll start. Yeah,
they
he's
love
gonna
that.
hurt anything. He'll start hurting you. People, they don't.
Yeah,
They don't.
well,
It's
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in their
Yeah.
blood. If they're trained to do that, they're going to do it. Same thing
Yeah,
with
yeah.
bird dogs. They find birds. It's unbelievable, but that's you let
Their
them off,
instincts.
and their instincts are like this is the best thing
Yeah.
best thing that they could ever do in their entire life. They do it all day long if they could.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah, it was
it's
thanks for asking. It
interesting.
was a really fun experience, and it was.
Yeah,
Then I
it
started
looks
reading
like
about it,
fun.
and yeah, that big Alaska race was going on while we had done it, so I sort of followed that, and
Yeah.
it's just a really cool thing to do.
It's really interesting. I found a company in Minnesota that's actually looking into helping people in wheelchairs actually get on a sled and have dogs pull them for a distance too. So that's something I'm kind of like, maybe at some point I would feel comfortable enough, thinking about trying that. But it's really cool.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely, you could do it. And so I drove the sled standing up and
Yeah.
then controlling it, and then you had to lean a little bit, and then my wife sat in the front,
Hmm.
and just went along for the ride.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's a great thing to do to get people outside because I'm a big believer. When I post stuff on Instagram, I started just tagging "Go outside,"
Yeah.
just hashtag
It
"Go
it
outside" because
you're
just go
right.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
People don't do it, just go outside. So to the extent they can get folks out there and kids to do that, that just can't do that, they can still experience something like that
Well, just the
without having
air,
this,
like, yeah,
just
being
the air
outside and breeze and
and the dogs love
everything.
people. Those dogs love people,
Hmm.
right? They just, it's like this way they use dogs for therapies and whatnot. Dogs,
Yeah.
they're bred to like people. So yeah, that would be that's a great uh experience for people to go outside in the woods, watch the dogs work, and just have a good time. I think, yeah, I hope they do more of that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's one of those little things that can change, change your day, just getting outside for 10 minutes, even doing something, and I moved out to kind of a rural Tennessee area in the last year, and it's amazing how just going out by the trees and just sitting a minute would, it helps so much, I think.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Don't
yeah.
get washed away this weekend with the flooding, with the
Yeah,
rain
we,
coming.
we've had some of that already, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, those little things are just huge, I think, too, So that's great that there's options like that now, I think, for people with MD to get to go do. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm
yeah,
glad people do it, that take the time and the money and the effort to do it, because they don't have to. They don't have to focus on
true.
that. But
That's true.
it's good that they want to give um, folks that can't give them that, whatever that
Yeah,
experience is that they otherwise couldn't do. And riding on a sled, going down the trail at 10 or 15 miles an hour, when you can never move. I mean, that's pretty cool.
it is. Yeah,
It's a good experience for them.
yeah, definitely. I think you probably can't beat it. I mean, it's one of the probably the most unique things you could try, I think. But um,
It is. I
a-
think so.
as far as like I know, you talked a little bit about your advocacy and awareness and spreading that and everything. With your current like cycling and everything that you're doing, like is there like a yearly thing that you're going to be doing that's something, in the US that people can find out more about and join, or like what's the process like for getting involved with your efforts on advocacy and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I had my shirt on. I formed
Yeah.
this team, FSHD cycling team, and I started that 2017 when we did RAM. And when I say I formed a team, it doesn't sound, it's not as well, it's formal, but not as formal as that. I mean, anyone can join. Just call me up.
Hmm.
So Michael Air who's riding triple bypass in in July, he's going to wear the jersey, and there's a guy Boris in St. Louis that rides. He's going to wear the
Hmm.
jersey. There's actually I call it the indoor cycling team, because we have some folks that are in wheelchairs in Brazil and in Texas, so they're part of the team. We haven't anything formal with them. We probably I need to do a formal sort of indoor cycling event. So they're part of it, and then a bunch of my friends, and I'm doing a race called Unbound Gravel in Kansas,
Hmm.
May 31st, and David and Abed, who did RAM with us, they're racing that, and that they all still wear our jerseys. So if anyone wants to reach out to me and just be part of it, let me know. And then formally, as I said, I'm going to do the Tour de Tucson in Arizona, and come the fall, we'll start promoting that and raising some money for that. And then,
Yeah.
like I said, every year I try to do something. It's just, and then part of it is, how many of my knucklehead friends I can convince to do it with me.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool though that you
Which
merge
is
kind of
usually pretty
your
easy. Which is usually
yeah,
pretty easy.
you combine like your passion, for cycling with the MD too,
Right.
so it's kind of a
Right.
two-sided thing. I really like that. Do
And
you
we've made
have
huge
like
awareness, because I'm
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Well, on the back of and my wife was wearing the hat the other day walking the dog, and somebody asked about it. But on the back of our cycling shorts, we have hashtag Cure FSHD. So you're in and a lot of these some of these are races, but they're group rides, but you're riding with a lot of other people, and people see that, and they'll ask, what is that?
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
if we can just, and you can, and some of them we've met are doctors and never heard of it. And some other times you run into nurses and they go like, yeah, we've heard of this, and glad you're
Mhm.
doing this. So it's, the more, just like with your podcast, the more people we can touch and just
Right.
become aware. Because when I was diagnosed in my late 30s, I didn't know anybody that had this. And
Right.
then I went to a fundraiser in Boston, and there were I'm like, a lot of people here. And then now there's local advocacy groups. So you meet more and more, there's a lot more people than we all think. But initially, and that's what we're doing, Patient Navigator and the registry, is just getting
Right.
in the local, we host 30, we call them walk-in rolls. So, because some people are in a wheelchair, but we host these
Right.
walk and roll events. We did 30 last year, and I think we did 30 the year before. So all over the country, including Canada. So that just continues to build awareness. Some of them raise a
Yeah.
lot of money, some don't. But I mean, the goal is to raise money to help fund everything, but also the goal is to get more people involved,
Hmm.
and aware and inclusive into the group. That's the real goal, I think. And
Right.
it's a marathon. We have to do it every month, every year. You just have to keep doing it to the
Just
end of time.
keep
And
going.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly
I
right.
understand kind of what you're saying there. When I grew up in a, small rural town, obviously there was nobody with MD anywhere there. And so like once I
Right.
started reaching out online and meeting, people and finding all the nonprofits and, like what you're doing too, it's just like, wow, there's a lot more people that know about this and experience and relate than I thought, and it's seems like it's just building momentum, more and more for the ones that, we keep going, trying to spread the message and awareness with it. Um,
Well, it's genetics. A lot more people have it than we all think. And like
True.
you had a guest on recently. I forget his name. He had the long beard on, but he was running with his friends, remember, and was slow and like, I'm just out of
Yeah.
shape. And he goes to the doctor, blood test. Oh, you got this. Like,
Yeah, that was
where'd
Ryan.
that come
Yeah.
from?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you almost never know when something like that's just gonna pop up and you start having progression of it and then, then you're kind of fighting for maintaining function and doing the things you want to do. So, I
Right. But
always talk about that
if we
nobody
get
knows.
right, and if people can, if there's a lot more people that have all this stuff, and
Yeah,
then if they can, if they can, if they can be diagnosed sooner, then I think they're better off, right? Then
right.
there's I have to go through the mental sort of cleansing, but they're
Yeah,
better off in the sense that they can um, figure out ways to live, you know, live better to the extent that
right.
if they're compromised or they can, or there's an opportunity for treatment, so they can participate in clinical trials, which are what a lot of people do. Um, that just helps the whole uh, community.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree, and I was curious in all your, cycling that you've done, is there like a story that kind of stands out that's just always in your mind as you're doing this that you'd like to share, or like is the whole thing, just really great experiences or something that, I'm sure there's a bunch of different things that have happened.
Oh my gosh, there's a there's a lot of
Yeah.
experiences. Riding. We rode through the night through the Flagstaff Mountains in the middle of the night. Elk
Mm.
on the sides. I mean,
Oh
those things are
man.
sort of surreal. I actually had a friend. I had a friend who passed away last year, unfortunately, and he was our crew for 2 years. And probably the first year, and I put this on my Instagram as a tribute to him. But the
Hmm.
first year in the middle of Kansas, it's 3 in the morning, and he's driving the RV. I'm with him. Everyone else is sleeping in the van in the RV, and he's trying to stay awake. I'm trying to stay awake. I'm trying to keep him staying awake so he doesn't
Hmm.
crash. And it was just,
Hmm.
we weren't saying a whole lot, but we were, we had to get somewhere at 4 in the morning so that I could start riding at 6 in the morning, and it was just one of those surreal moments where whenever else you're going to be riding through, nowhere, Kansas, 80 miles an hour
Right.
in an RV trying to finish a bike race to get to Annapolis, Maryland by Saturday. And
Hmm.
um, I appreciated it in the moment, but then since he's passed, you really appreciate those types of moments. So those are,
Right.
just I think it's appreciate every little moment, even when you're dehydrated on the side of the road waiting to get in the air conditioning, and then the exhilarating moments where you're flying down a mountain at 40 miles an hour, and it's just
Yeah.
and the scene. I think the thing about these long and even the 100-mile races or adventure races we've done and all over the country, just the people people are so nice, in this country.
Hmm.
Everywhere you go, and they're intrigued by what you're doing. You're on a bike in the middle of nowhere at a gas station getting a Coke. What are you doing? We're riding to, Annapolis, and you're in Kansas. What?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they're really cool and supportive. And then the scenery in this country is just stunning. Doesn't matter where you
Hmm.
are, it's stunning. You can be in the desert, 120 degrees. You can be in the mountains at 12,000 feet. You can be in that
Yeah.
in Tennessee. You can be in Florida, some dirt road in the middle of nowhere. But the scenery is just it's stunning. That's
Yeah.
why I say go outside, because it doesn't matter where you are, just go outside and you're going to be like in awe of whatever is in your location.
Right. Right.
That is just, it's just cool. Was reading a book today. I just finished it. It had to do with, it was called The Unforgiving Hours,
Hmm.
and it's about endurance events. One guy did a bike ride in Alaska. Someone swam the English Channel. Someone did race across America.
Hmm.
Um, the first Ironman uh, finishers. Lady was ABC. You may not remember ABC Wild Water Sports in the '80s was
Hmm.
all these endurance sports sort of popping up and these crazy, just unbelievable stories. But they talked about going through. I think they were going through Colorado in the middle of the night, and
Hmm.
it was the first time they could actually see stars. So like we're all in these
Wow.
cities, and there's so much light pollution that you
Yeah.
don't realize and we saw that in Mexican Hat, and it's another just cool experience. Mexican Hat, Utah, in the middle of nowhere on the third
Hmm.
day of the bike race, and we got there at midnight, and there's zero light pollution there.
Yeah.
And there's a canyon there, and you look up, and you're like, there's a few more stars in the sky than I thought there were. I mean,
That sounds like growing up in New Mexico for me. There was a lot of
it's New
nights where
Mexico.
there's,
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's
that
exactly.
those scenic
So
areas are
you know
worth
what it's
a
like.
lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know what it's like. You're like, wow. And it's just one of those surreal moments. You're like, I think this place, the universe is a little bigger than me.
Oh yeah,
It's just like
it's definitely that.
it's a big
Yeah,
universe out here. Yeah, it's a big universe out here. So there's, I'm sure I could go on all day on the
you could
experiences
probably write
because
many
it's
books
just,
on the, yeah.
yeah, the people and the people that friends and family that did it with us. My wife went 3 times. My daughter went 1 year. My son went 1 year. My dad
Hmm.
drove. My brother drove 1 year. My mother was at the finish and the start. So there's,
Hmm.
all these experiences that unless you do something, you'll never have them. Sitting on
Right.
the couch watching TV. Maybe you do, but it's a different way. I'd rather
And
go
there's
do it
something
outside
about
with
that
other people.
road tripping when you can, like it's just, if you can experience even a few times being able to just go drive somewhere, and like you said, middle of the night,
Right.
like those just little moments kind of as you're going through, or they're really valuable, and I think about,
Yeah. There's
I got
something
to go
else
to
about
Yellowstone
uh,
even. My sister was up there
I
for a
haven't
few
been there yet.
summers, and it's amazing. Just anywhere in the park, you just stop and look around, and it's so worth it. So
Absolutely. I've never been there. I'm hoping to get there this summer, but absolutely.
yeah,
You're right. It's another place. It's just you're in awe of the nature.
yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I encourage everyone to go
Yeah,
outside and move and
definitely.
move and move.
That too,
Yeah.
yeah, some kind of movement, but
Yeah. Move. Yeah. I always hashtag movement as medicine because
it
I
is.
think it's so important just to, it's that one thing that's never, um, that you can really never argue with is more movement is better
Right.
for
Of some
anything, whether
kind.
you have a
And that,
disease, some kind, there's no, and it's showing now just for, you start looking at, diseases that are chronic as you get older and a
mhm,
lot of that can be delayed or not as severe with having started moving at a young age.
right. Right. I
And
totally
again,
agree
to the
with you
best of
there.
people's ability, because some folks can't move as well. And
Yeah.
it is, it is what it is, but they can move. I mean, most people can do something. And it's, as you
Right.
said, if you don't move, you don't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's
Yeah,
not a black and white thing. It's like whatever movement you can do, like there's a range that
correct.
it's all good. So I definitely
Correct.
understand where you're coming from on that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate the time, George. And I definitely, want to reach out and connect in the future maybe and talk some more. Maybe
Yeah.
have
I'll stay connected.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Let's stay connected.
is Instagram kind of the place that you point most people to find out about what you're doing and everything with the
Yeah.
cycling or?
Yeah. It
Okay.
goes, yeah. I post on Instagram, then it goes to Facebook. So I post.